So the AIC is Australia's National Centre of Crime and Criminal Justice. Our main mission is to promote justice and research and reduce crime by undertaking criminological research and communicating those research findings. And that's a key point you might want to bear in mind throughout the day. You can do research and get a great result. If you don't actually disseminate that work into the field, is there much point in doing it? Our ongoing objectives: to maintain relevance as a key centre for criminological research for government, for law enforcement agencies and other stakeholders, and to continue to conduct and disseminate quality primary and secondary over-the-horizon research. In other words, a more strategic research that can inform the field more broadly, plus at the same time to do the work that needs to be done in a fairly short time frame to meet government policy needs, law enforcement policy or practice needs. The AIC has been going for quite some time, since 1973. It was developed under the Criminology Research Act. It's a statutory independent agency reporting to the Minister for Home Affairs. And what that means is we're government, but we're sort of quasi-government. We aren't a line department like the Attorney General's Department or Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, but we do report into government. We are funded predominantly by government, but we have a degree of independence, as you'd expect for a research agency. Currently, we're governed by a board of management that I report up to. At this point in time, we're looking at changing that structure such that we have an advisory council. That will happen probably in the next year or so, but at this point in time, it really doesn't mean that much. We have a board of management that oversights some of our work, if you want to call it that way, or helps give us broad direction, and they're important stakeholders for us. At the moment, we have 53 staff at the Institute. About 35 of those are research staff. Our budget's about $6.75 million from the Commonwealth. That's our core budget. We usually get about $1 million to $2 million extra in contracted research, which I'll talk a little bit about in a sec. We don't actually get any core funding from the states and territories, but we do get a lot of work with them through contracted research. So in other words, Victoria, Department of Justice may come to us and ask us to evaluate their sex offender program, and they'll fund us to do that. And through a range of opportunities like that, we usually pick up $1 to $2 million additional funding. And we're hoping this year's going to be a bumper year. We do contracted research for Commonwealth and state territory agencies. We do it in partnership with academic institutions and through grants bodies like the CRC, but also the Australian Research Grants Program and other such grants bodies. And we also work with the private sector. Chubb Security, for example, might ask us to do some work on armed robbery. If they want to fund us and we can afford the time to do it, we'll consider it. Key stakeholders, clearly our ministers, the Minister for Home Affairs and the Attorney General, other parts of the Commonwealth Government, the Commonwealth Attorney General's Department, which is the portfolio that we sit in, justice and law enforcement agencies at the Commonwealth level, which would be the Crime Commission, AUSTRAC, CrimTrack, Australian Federal Police, Customs and Border Control, to name a few. Obviously, key stakeholders are state territory governments, justice and police and other agencies that do a lot of the day-to-day criminology and criminal justice work. Academia, clearly. The public, NGOs and other advocacy bodies. And also international crime and justice groups. We have quite strong links into a range of similar organisations that operate around the globe. There's two big networks and we're involved with both. That's a nice picture which will be up on the website. I'm not expecting you to sort of be able to read all that, but essentially it was an attempt to try and map our stakeholder network, if you like, and it ranges from the university sector to industry, to media, to peak bodies, international exchanges, government bodies, etc. So it's just a nice diagram I thought I'd put in there for a bit of colour. And that will be available for you to look at online if you wish. Okay, the research program, clearly it's the heart of the organisation. We undertake research in a number of ways. We monitor trends in crime in the criminal justice system. We build knowledge of offending and victimisation, including understanding risks, protective factors, vulnerabilities according to place, entity, individual and community factors. We identify emerging or changed criminal activity, and we try and build an evidence base for what actually works, what actually reduces crime or prevents crime, and how can we effectively evaluate that to sort of demonstrate clearly that what works is working. And I'll talk a bit more about that. Essentially, we have two, I guess, major ways in which we undertake this work. The first is our monitoring programs, and some of these reports are over on the side here. That's where we essentially take annual counts of particular crime types and we produce large reports which summarise, if you like, trends in that crime group over time. So, for example, we have the National Homicide Monitoring Program, which has been going for over 14 years, one of the best in the world. And essentially we get access to pretty much every homicide across the country and we map the trends in those homicides over time. And as you would expect, that provides a wealth of information as to what sort of homicides are occurring, who's committing those homicides, who are the victims, and some of the key factors that may influence the perpetration of homicide. And we do a similar thing with deaths in custody, drug use by police detainees. I'll talk a bit more about that later. With armed robbery, with firearm theft. We have a range of these programs, I think about 10 in all, where we try and map what the crime type or the criminal offence is doing, how it changes over time. Now, allied with that, we do a range of primary and secondary research projects which may be linked to those national monitoring programs, although may be totally different. And how we select those primary and secondary research projects essentially is based on a number of factors, including what the Commonwealth Government's priorities are. We tend to get advice from the Commonwealth as what they'd like to see us doing. For example, serious and organised crime is a big issue at the moment now. That's an area we've done a lot of work on in the last 30 years, but at the moment there's a particular need around organised crime, and for the AIC to involve themselves in partnership with some of the Commonwealth law enforcement agencies like the Crime Commission, Federal Police, etc. And so we're taking that on board when trying to do some work in that area. We will look for opportunities to partner with law enforcement, whether it be at state territory level or across at the national level with the Commonwealth agencies. We want academic relevance. We don't want to be doing research which won't give us a good outcome in an academic sense. We want to be adding value to the field. There's no point in doing research which is nicely priced for us but doesn't actually add any value for anyone. We also want to base our choices around what skills and expertise we've developed and also the availability of AIC staff. We get a lot of options presented to us during the year as to what research we might want to undertake, and obviously we also take into account where our skills lie, what our expertise is, and you'll hear a bit more about this later in the day, and also are our staff actually available to deliver on time with a good quality product. And that's important. When you're delivering in this sort of environment, you want to deliver good quality product in a timely fashion. You want to make a difference, and to do that you've got to be right there with the outcome. Now, the research program of the 35 staff essentially is broken up into 6 research teams which are managed with each by a research manager. I'm not going to go into those in detail because essentially they're a management mechanism that we use to sort of shape our work and to ensure that staff are adequately supervised and supported in their work with the AIC. It's probably easy to talk about the research themes that we work on, the things we actually like to focus on in our research program. And these are current as of last week when I had the Board of Management meeting. And I'll just take you through some of the stuff we've been doing over time, things that we might be doing in the future, and areas we think will be of considerable interest to us for the foreseeable future. And these don't change that much. In the last 5 years, as far as I can tell, I've only been here a year, they haven't changed that much. There's a little bit of tweaking here and there, but they're pretty much standard. Clearly, you'd expect us to be focusing on violent crime, so we do. The National Homicide Monitoring Program I've talked about, that's a really important program that we're running on. Another big issue which Matthew Willis will talk about after I get off the stage is working with Indigenous communities looking at criminal justice issues, both for victimology and also offenders and the perpetration of criminal offences. A key element of that is also looking at community safety as a whole, how you can improve community safety and how you can measure it. So violence and child abuse in Indigenous communities is a key issue for us right now, as you would expect given the NT emergency response and the COAG agenda around overcoming Indigenous disadvantage. As someone who was intimately part of that process as I was working in the Northern Territory at that point, we see this as a very important area for us to keep being involved in. Intimate partner homicide, the characteristics of domestic violence offenders, sexual assault, armed robbery, knife crime, these are things we will consider as part of the violent crime theme. Often as we go through you'll find that research can fit under different themes at once. It can be, if you like, co-badged, but I'll just sort of try to give you an example of some of the work we do for each of these themes. Crime in the community is really important. Looking at how crime affects the population as a whole or particular populations is really important. And again, Indigenous people are a really key area for us to look at right now, as are juveniles' contact with the criminal justice system and migrants and overseas student victimisation. I'll talk a bit about that. And also even in terms of environmental crime, what does it mean for our population as a whole? And we've got some work we hope to have coming out on that in the next few months. As I go through, you'll see a little MR in brackets. All that means is it's a monitoring program, so it has an annual report which comes out, which summarises, if you like, how data changes over time for that particular criminal offence.